ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont, and we finally got another update from Judas. Although I am calling shenanigans because I had literally checked this site on December 2nd because I remember I was actually off that day and I was like, oh, let me check the dev log, see if anything updated. This was like 8 o'clock in the morning though, and it hadn't updated. So now that I'm logging in and checking it again, and it's like, oh, it's December 2nd was when it was updated. I was like, you cheeky bastards, you got me because I checked that day just too early. But let's get into this update for Judas. Hi, everyone. It's been a few months since our first devlog. We're balancing time between working on the game and sharing our progress. Today, we wanted to give you a look at the creative process with some key members of the development team who have shaped the game. Creating a Judas simulator. People often think our games start with the story, but we're pretty much always start with the core design element. In BioShock, it was the big daddy and little sister bond. That's cool. I didn't know that. That's actually super cool. So the entire mechanics of the world were built around big daddy and little sister. That's pretty cool. In Infinite, it was the companion character Elizabeth. In Judas, Elizabeth's one of the best companions. Sorry to interrupt myself again because she never needs to be taken care of. She'll run away from danger, she'll hide, she gets out of the way, and she gives you like health and ammo and oh geez. Vigors? Yeah, vigors. And she gives you vigor energy or whatever they call it to refill your vigors. But like beautiful mechanic. And excuse me. Excuse me a moment. There's something in my throat. But they where was I? Oh, yeah, I knew about the Elizabeth being like the driving mechanics and how they built the game around her because they announced that and Ken did like a interview and talked about how Elizabeth was going to be interacting differently than other companions in games prior to Infinite, which she was. Most of the time in old games, if you had a companion, you had to like babysit them, you had to move obstacles out of the way, or they would just get kind of lost. Nope, not Elizabeth. She knows what she's doing. All right, where are we at? In Judas, it's a dynamic narrative. We asked ourselves, how do we tell a fully realized story where the characters can respond in real time to even the smallest choices the player makes? Figuring out how to do that on a systemic level took many years. Eventually, the pieces formed around our main character, Judas. Okay. So it sounds like they're actually trying to do the thing that I wish games have been doing for years. And certain games, I didn't see why they didn't do it. So, like, let's take Pokemon, for example. Pokemon took 20 years too long to advance to the next stages of Pokemon gameplay. They were using the exact same formula for so long, even though technology was advancing well beyond their formula for gameplay. They could have done so much more with back when they had simplified graphics. Like you beat a gym leader, every character you talk to afterwards should recognize you as the person that beat that gym leader because it's supposed to be a big accomplishment in Pokemon. When you become the Pokemon League champion, everyone in the game should have like a dialogue that's like, "Oh, hey, you're the Pokemon League champion." But you go back and talk to people early in the game and they say the same, "Hey, kid, you're nobody right now," kind of shit to you. Having characters dynamically evolve to where you do something and they recognize that shouldn't be that difficult in games, especially ones that are very simple like Pokemon was. Now, in a full 3D rendered action adventure world, that's a lot harder to do, but it sounds like Judas is trying. And I give them props because that's something I've been saying for years that games need. They need character, they need in story character plot progression or development for like the world around them. Like your character affects the world, it should affect everything. But let's get back to the devlog. I'm rambling. Drew Mitchell, lead narrative designer. The project began with us wanting to tell stories that are less linear. that react to the player and unfold in ways that no one's ever seen in one of Ken's games. That told us a lot up front about what we need, namely characters with strong competing objectives who each had a stake in everything the player did. Starting with that framework, we spent a lot of time thinking about those characters, their conflicts, the right setting to force them all together, and the systems underpinning it all. For a long time, there wasn't even a set protagonist, just a sort of cipher, a blank slate. Eventually, the story and the world started to coalesce into something specific, and we needed to figure out who the player character should be. As a rule, you want to put your heroes in the last place they ever want to find themselves, so that what kind of person would really struggle to deal with all these relationships and warring interest. And I remember that it was at the point where Ken came up with this monologue that kicked everything off. Ken Levine, student president and creative director. Do we really need an introduction to him? Man's a legend. I often come up with ideas when I'm out on runs. And one day I thought of this speech that would define the character that we're trying to figure out. The speech popped into my head as I was struggling through the third mile. Sorry, third mile, my friend. It seems like Ken Levine and Chuck Palahniuk should probably get together because the Chuck Palahniuk's the author of Survivor, Choke, and Fight Club. For those of you that don't know, three amazing books. Check them out. Some of the most uh compelling writing. I don't suggest any of his other books. I just don't. They're not as good. I would say Survivor, Choke, and Fight Club are the pinnacle of Chuck's writing, but he does most of his writing and ideas while running, which is weird that Ken does that as well. I guess that's like a thing for certain creative developers because when you're in a physical stressful moment, it narrows how you think. So maybe it helps people focus and be more creative. I'll have to give it a try sometime. I'm more of a cyclist, but I'm more worried about not getting run the fuck over when I'm out there because I'm not one of those assholes that just rides his bike wherever he wants. Uh, hate those guys. I only eat at vending machines because I don't like interacting with waiters. Restaurants are more complicated. There are greetings and hellos, and is this table okay? And I'm thinking, why should I care what you recommend? You're not me, but I'm not supposed to say that. So I just have to count the seconds until the interaction can end. Devise socially acceptable ways of saying go fuck yourself because for me conversation is a prelude to failure. Vending machines never ask me a question that I don't know the answer to. The exchange is reduced to the transaction, money in, product out. Why can't people be more like that? Holy shit, this explains why video games that you make always have vending machines, every one of them. And I often wondered about that, like, what kind of world do we live in where vending machines are everywhere? And it's because you view a vending machine as a more socially acceptable interaction than talking with a person. Imagine that, a game developer who's socially awkward. Who knew? But that's fucking great. I love this line right there. I have to devise socially acceptable ways of saying go fuck yourself. And Ken's a genius. Little butt implant on the back of the hand. So first Ghost Story Judas update. Damn. 19.4 2019 already had a basic character design. Woo. The Chucks timeless. I saw somebody dressed the other day like faded blue jeans, like plain white t-shirt, buffalo plaid flannel and Converse, and I was like, "Holy crap, this look will never go away. It's been around for 40 years. It's probably here to stay." Judas concept art. The stream of consciousness became the touchstone we kept coming back to for the character and ultimately the entire game. Judas, as she came to be known, understands machines in a way she could never understand people. That became her greatest strength and greatest weakness. We put her in a science fiction world, a colony ship filled with robots, a futuristic setting that makes someone like her extremely powerful. But it's also a world where personal success hinges on how well you can conform to the rules, because dissent would lead to the failure of the mission. It's very corporate based, I guess. That seems to be a theme with, sci-fi dystopian future. That makes her an outlaw, a pariah, a Judas. Well, pretty liberal use of the term Judas there, Ken. That tension at the heart of the character came to inform everything about the game, which we stopped thinking of as a FPS and started calling a Judas simulator. Everything comes back to that core idea of interacting with the world as Judas. Drew Mitchell, lead narrative designer. Okay, so everybody's weighing in their little opinion, and Ken just happened to have the funniest shit to say. Where I think Judas differs from the most from BioShock or BioShock Infinite is right there in the name. The game is named after her. Booker and Jack were strangers in a strange land, just like the player. Judas is a narrative of the Mayflower. In fact, she's at the center of the events that set the story in motion. She's got history with this world and the people in it. Most of it very, very bad. Her story is about so much more than getting off a sinking ship, and it gives the players so many ways to determine how her journey plays out. It's always a risk to hand the player a really defined, really vocal character to control. You always worry about creating dissonance between them. So it's been great to see testers stop and ask themselves, what would Judas do here? How would she react? It shows they're in conversation with the character and taking her and the journey seriously. Maybe, I guess some games where you have a clearly defined character do really well, others don't. It all boils down to the gameplay and how well the world is built, really. Because what game was it? Dragon Age 2. Your character Hawk is supposed to be very well defined as a character, other than the basic class of character you choose. Like which, are you a thief or well, what is it, rogue, warrior, or like a mage? But it's one of those things where the world of Dragon Age 2 wasn't really well developed, like the actual world you play in. So people got real mad at the game and didn't like it, even though the character was very much what they're describing here. You were playing the character, the story was woven around the character. Where in Dragon Age Origins, your character is inserted into an already happening narrative. Like, and that's what BioShock was. Your character, Jack, Booker, were inserted into an already ongoing narrative. Like things were happening, you showed up when things were happening. Well, Booker shows up and then things happen because of him, because of the prophecy, and you got to play the game to understand the story. I'm not going to try to go into it. That's like an hour-long video. Maybe I'll do a story breakdown of BioShock and BioShock Infinite one day because I do love them. Top 10 games of all time, in my opinion. But them going to where the story is going to revolve around the character is new territory for Ken Levine and team because System Shock, BioShock was always, like I said, a character entering a narrative in the Mayflower. So this is the ship, I think. Uh, we want to communicate back to the article. Obviously, we want to communicate this world as best we can, not only through lore but visually. A unique challenge in creating our colony ship setting is that it's a much older space to craft for players' exploration. Rapture and Columbia existed as they were from the foundings, but the Mayflower is decades into its voyage and it's changed immensely since its departure. Well, hold on. I would argue that Rapture had changed since, like, what do you mean? You show up at the fall of Rapture after everything has gone to shit. So Rapture was a paradise for at least like a decade, right? So that's what I feel like with that seems misconstrued right there. I feel like the first BioShock and like Rapture and Mayflower probably are going to be in the same situation, although the Mayflower should be technically more well put together because it just started failing. Where in Rapture, you come in at the end. Shit's already gone to hell. Huh. But I guess we'll have to see because this seems like they don't understand what Rapture was. Yeah, Columbia, 100%. Like you enter Columbia as Booker at its peak, and then you're the reason things go to hell. But they were always supposed to. Again, play the game. Self-fulfilling prophecy, circular logic, um, parallel worlds. It's a super fun game. Nathan Failliff I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. At the beginning of its journey, it was more practical, conventional, modular ship. But over the course of its mission, due to conflicts between factions and people and ideals, it's changed into what you see now. And we're working on communications or communicating this through the environment. Like with any city with significant history, if you start digging up the street, you would find layers of the city's past, older eras of street long buried, forgotten, and built over by the roads upon which you now walk. With the Mayflower as a generational ship, we want to imbue the world with the same sense of time, history, and credibility. This is a civilization that went through eras of conflict and rebirth, and having the characters and the architecture of the world reflect those layers of the onion is a powerful mechanism for visual storytelling. This allows players to act as a sort of historian and architect as they explore the Mayflower through uncovering more. You'll make increasingly informed decisions with the story and characters on your journey. Another factor in creating this setting is that the world itself is dynamic, not just the story and characters. Just like with the dynamic narrative, we had to train the system on what makes good environments by using sophisticated tagging and rule sets to populate the world with believable design elements. Okay. Wonder why that's not in quotes. Like, was that something added? Is this something from Ken commenting on this? My throat is really dry today. Must be the low humidity. Used to it being swimmable through the air. Karen Seegers, lead artist. We basically identify the puzzle pieces and buckets of content that we want to make up the setting of the Mayflower. One example is living quarters. We don't just have one type of space. We have different categories: VIP pilgrim quarters, regular pilgrim dorms, all the way down to violator quarters. So a brig, right? What isn't that what a person who breaks the law on a ship gets put in the brig? Uh, or is that just like a trope and I'm misunderstanding it? That might be a trope that I'm misunderstanding. The art room creates the set pieces and materials for each of these quarters and designs. And the design team does deep dives on how well those pieces can fit together in a variety of layouts that feel grounded for the theme and support gameplay. When assembling the layouts in game, the system has to understand the various buckets of puzzle pieces and hierarchy of the content so it can switch it together in a meaningful way that supports the storytelling. More exclusives and fancier places can have high ceilings, giant windows, and grand lobbies, but the violator space in the lower, grungy underbelly of the ship, you have to take what we call the stairway to hell to get to them, separating these spaces both visually and physically. So they're in steerage or in the underbelly. Ugh. In our previous games, we would do all this by hand, but that doesn't allow for the dynam- dynamism. Is that the correct word? The dynamism we are chasing. So we took on this challenge of teaching the system how to be a storyteller and an interior decorator, creating a rule set that we trust so it can populate the world in believable, compelling ways that allow reactivity in a way you've never seen in our previous games. Okay, so the thing I'm liking most about this is this quick little video. What do we got here? Quick, no music. Blah. Is this an example of how the system has put the environments together? Sparks, I think Sparks might be the one thing that video games will never get accurately. The closest I've seen was the Killer Instinct revival on Xbox, because the particle physics in that game were insane. So this is just a few scenes, and it looked like, oh, it said it at the bottom. Work in progress in engine footage. So it looks like they're showing just these couple of environments and the different times of day and lighting dynamics. It's pretty cool. Would you kindly? Haha. I say this so much in the real world. Very few people pick up on it though. Like I just probably sound like I'm being nice to most people when in fact I'm secretly compelling you to do what I tell you to. Uh, we would love to know what you would like to read more about in future devlogs. So please let us know on our socials or through the email what you most interested about in Judas and how we're creating it. Links to our socials here, community inbox. Thank you for reading, Ken and the Ghost Story team. So what I was saying before I went off on a little tangent about the video is it makes me pleased to know that a lot of the people working on this game are the people that have been with Ken Levine the whole time while working on BioShock. Having those senior developers and artists on your team is probably what's going to help this game a lot and save it, because it's going to be polished. It's going to be complete, I hope, and I really want there to be no fucking day one updates. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to send them an email. I'm going to share the community inbox link. I don't care about the socials. You can find them on your own if you're on social media. But I will share the community inbox link for anyone that wants to send more suggestions to the devlogs. I'm going to send a few myself. One of them being, please make sure your game is complete on release so we don't have any day one updates. That's going to be my biggest concern. But there are some things I want to know about. Like, I want to know about the pseudo magic system, because there's going to be a pseudo magic system. There always is in BioShock games or in Ken Levine games like System Shock, BioShock. But I am curious to see where this goes. I do hope we get a little more frequent updates on this game, because we are to the point where it should be close to release, because it was originally scheduled to release, I think, in 2026. So, or was it this year? Ugh, there's so many games that were supposed to come out in 2025. I get them mixed up because there's a lot of games that just aren't. GTA 6, for example, uh, which might never come out. I think the funniest meme I saw was the Matt Damon aging meme, where it's like them announcing the original release date for GTA 6, and then it's him aged up as the old guy going, me finally get to playing it when they actually release it. Like, because the game ain't never coming out. And they're doing exactly what I said they were going to do. They were waiting to see if people would be willing to pay $100 even though they complained. And I guarantee GTA 6 is going to be $100 game. And it's probably going to break records because of it. But you got to go back and then adjust Red Dead Redemption 2 to $100 and see how well it would have done. Because Red Dead Redemption 2 still remains the largest media release in history. But I'm rambling about Rockstar now, and I was supposed to be talking about Judas and Ghost Team or Ghost Story. I do that every time. I say Ghost Team because I'm used to saying Kin's team, but it's Ghost Story is the new game development team. But yeah, Ghost Story Games, Judas update, devlog number 2. Let's hope we get them a little more frequently. But that's all I have for this episode. This is your host Belmont, signing out.